What's up guys, it's Cobalt here and welcome back to another video. First things first, I have to acknowledge the brand new intro. This was made by my friend Ivan, which I really appreciate. They were the person who edited my previous intro and outro as well. So now that I have new channel art and stuff, I figured it was time for us to update it. So everybody go down below in the comments and say thank you, Ivan. But anyways, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I created my very first two-headed LPS custom. I'm definitely not the first person to have made a two-headed custom. I know Pumpkins Customs, for example, has made this amazing custom that technically has two heads that are fused together. And then also LPS Love Witch created this amazing custom, which is very similar to the one that I made because they are both based off of the same thing. But anyways, they are both fabulous, amazing customizers. You should definitely go and check out. So I'll put their social media links down below in the description. When it comes to this custom, I completed this guy on December 31st, 2024. So it was one of my final customs of the year. And if you've seen my top 10 customs from 2024 video, you will have seen this one already. But of course, I will be talking about it more here and walking you through the process that I actually took to create it. This custom also happens to be a commission for somebody over on Etsy, so if you are somebody who is interested in commissioning me, either now or in the future, I have a link to my Etsy shop where you can do that down below in the description as well. So all that information aside, this custom was inspired by this poem. Again, LPS Love Witch inspired their custom off of the same thing, but of course I still wanted to try to make my custom as different as I possibly could. And the first thing that I decided to do with that was making sure that I chose different bases from them and the way that I arranged the heads to be different as well. This character is supposed to be a cow, but I opted to go with a goat LPS for the base because thanks to G7 I have a surplus of goat bases, and both of the heads that I used to create this one happen to be G7 LPS as well, and I will demonstrate exactly how I did that process for you guys. So I will be using these two Tiger LPS to demonstrate this, and maybe in the future I can actually turn what I'm making here into another custom. But first things first, I remove both of the heads from the body and then I take out the neck pegs on both of them. Technically you could leave the neck peg in one of the heads so you can reattach it to an LPS body, but the way that I've decided to do these sculptural pieces, I don't really want their heads to be posable or anything. And I'm sure there's also a way where you could configure the neck peg to actually sit in the middle of both heads, but again, that's trial and error that I don't really want to figure out right now. With both the cow custom and the tiger that I'm demonstrating with, one of the heads is actually a full head and the second head is half of a head, and I'm connecting them in a way so that the final character will have 2 mouths and 3 eyes. And personally, I think this is really cool, which is why I did it, but there are real birth defects in animals, especially cats, where they can actually be born with heads like this, which I think is really interesting, especially from an artistic standpoint. So with the second head, I'm essentially cutting it in half once the neck peg is removed. Whether you're using a G7 pet or an older generation pet, it definitely helps to heat it up in boiling water or with a hairdryer just to soften the plastic. But G7 LPS are honestly great for this kind of project because they're already super soft and malleable. But again, heating it up just makes it a little bit easier to cut through because I'm literally cutting this with scissors. I'm sure you could use an X-Acto knife, but honestly, scissors make everything easier. Once I have it cut the way that I want, then I sort of stretch it over the full head and then I hot glue both of them together just to secure it. This isn't necessarily the final attachment, but I just want to make sure that both of the heads are securely connected. I would also recommend adding some super glue for additional support, but for the sake of this video, I didn't do that because I just wanted to record this super quickly. Once the hot glue is dry, then I go in with some actual clay. I'm using epoxy sculpt clay here because again, this stuff air dries and it dries super rock solid, so it's going to be a really secure fit, and it's also really easy to smooth out compared to other clays. So I kind of just make a little clay worm and cover up the seam and the hot glue that I already created by attaching both of the heads, and then I smooth it out from there. Once the clay is dry, I would definitely recommend going over it with some sandpaper just to smooth it out a little bit more. But again, definitely rushing with this demonstration, so off camera I'll probably do some final tweaks to it. But of course, once you have the attachment secure, it's time to add the middle eye. The goat LPS bases that I used for the custom that this video is actually about honestly worked really well because their eyes are basically just ovals and that's a really simple shape. These tiger bases maybe weren't the greatest thing to use for this demonstration because their eyes are a really weird shape, but I'd kind of tried to mimic that with the eye that I've stuck on here. But basically you just make that out of a flat piece of clay, stick it on, and essentially you're done. But obviously tweak it to the best of your ability to make it more clean and polished and to fit whatever bases you decide to use. But hopefully this is a technique that you can try out and maybe apply to some of your own customs. So after I had both of the heads attached together, I needed to figure out how I wanted to do the body. And again, I did actually leave one of the pegs in this head originally, but I decided to take that out because I opted to sculpt the body entirely from scratch using Sculpey clay, which is an oven baked clay. So I found some references online to try to get the pose that I wanted. I started with a ball of tinfoil and then just went from there with the sculpting. The body definitely came out a little bit bigger than I intended, and that was a main factor in why I decided to make the head static and make this more of a statue figure than one with a posable or bobbly head. And I think gluing down the head helped a little bit more proportion wise, although the body is still a little bit big, let's be honest. Since the body was made from an oven baked type of clay, I opted to bake that separately properly before attaching the head, and then with the head I glued it on in the posing that I wanted, and then added the neck and smoothed it out from there with more epoxy sculpt, just so I wouldn't have to worry about maybe creating toxic fumes by baking epoxy sculpt or worrying about my LPS melting in the oven. Lots of people use Sculpey on their customs, and the LPS turn out fine because Sculpey really only bakes at 250 degrees Fahrenheit, so having melted LPS isn't a huge issue, but it's not really a risk that I want to take, especially when this is a paid commission. So now that all of the sculpting is finally done, and yes, I procrastinated a lot, it was time to get onto the painting. Something that I loved about this commission is that the commissioner basically gave me free reign to do whatever I wanted with this one, aside from the fact that obviously it had to be a two-headed cow and had to have some sort of star detailing, which you will see later in the design. But because it seemed like such a whimsical creature to me, and I wanted to really show like the beauty in the deformity, much like the poem does, I decided to go for an unnatural color, so I chose purple. In hindsight, I think maybe that was a little bit too similar to the custom that LPS Love Witch made, but in the end, I still think they turned out different enough, so it's okay. But yeah, I went for this really nice lilac purple. I really love this color of paint, and I use it quite frequently. It's also just like a really nice paint that applies really well. It's the perfect thickness, and it's super opaque, so it really only took me like 2 layers to cover the whole base. And in case you're wondering, the paint that I used here is called Model Color, but for some of these smaller details later on with the eyes, I ended up using Americana. Those are the 2 paint brands that I use all the time and would highly recommend. Once the base coat was done, I went in with the detailing, and of course you cannot have a cow without its spots, so I used this more gray tone color, but it still has a slight purple hue in it. This is another color that I really like, and again, it has the same qualities as the purple that make it super easy to apply and ultimately made the painting process of this custom super fast and speedy, which is exactly what I needed given how long I took on the sculpting. And as you can see here, this is where I added the little stars into the design. I thought that this would be a good place to add them, and they're not necessarily a star shape, more of like a twinkly diamond kind of shape, I suppose, but personally I thought that it fit well, and it also ties into what I do with the eyes later on. As I was working on this guy, I was a little bit worried that the goat bases that I chose for this custom wouldn't necessarily translate to cow, but once I painted their little like nose muzzle area, I think it definitely gave off more cow vibes than goat vibes, so very happy with that. And again, I think this custom is so cute. I'll admit, when I started painting the eyes, the camera goes a little bit out of focus, so sorry about that, but you will get much better views of this guy in the end during the reveal. But of course, for the eyes, I started with a white base coat, and the overall eye style that I did for these was super simple. It's literally the most simple eye that I ever do. It's basically just the base color with a little bit of blending to add some darker shading or some lighter shading, and then the black pupil. I know I keep saying this, but very soon I will be finally posting my eye tutorial where I specifically go over how to paint LPS style eyes, and these are a little bit different from that, but pretty much the same steps are applied there. And now the custom is pretty much done, and that's basically all that I had to say about it. I really hope that you guys enjoyed seeing this custom. Again, it was one of my favorite customs from 2024, and I'm so proud of the way that it turned out, and I would love to do more experimental stuff with like a 2-headed custom again in the future. So if videos like this interest you and you would like to see me paint more customs on camera, maybe I'll turn the tiger from the little demo that I did into a full custom later on. Please let me know down below in the comments if you would like to see that, because hearing your guys' feedback on videos like this really motivates me a lot to film more of them, because trust me, trying to customize on camera is so hard, so I need that motivation. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, thank you to Ivan for the new intro, and I hope you guys enjoy this aesthetic montage of the custom to round off the video, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!